Well, I think once you've registered your school and made a commitment to get involved in the competition, you have to consider, first of all, the group you're going to work with. And that's generally, you're either working with a transition year group or a fifth year group. It will depend on the individual school and the enthusiasm of the students who want to actually get involved. There are advantages in working with both groups. For the transition years, they have a lot of free time or flexibility within their time schedule. On the other hand, they may be out on work experience or on trips now that the COVID restrictions have been eased, which is great to see. The fifth years, on the other hand, may have a more mature approach, but then they have the pressure of tests and exams. So you have to decide on that. And again, it probably depends on the students themselves and whether they want to get involved. So once you've decided on the group you're going to work with, I think the next thing you have to do then is explain, what the concern debates are all about, the details, and the reasons why students should get involved in the debate programme. First of all, I think the ideal is to get a large group working on the debate, not just to limit it to 4 or 5 or 6, if that's possible, and then it really will take off in school. And so a wide range of skills are needed for the debates. It's not just the 4 to 6 speakers out front. You need students with writing skills who will help to write the speeches with them. You need students who are good readers and like reading, and they'll do the research and they'll be interested in that, but they'd never like to be out front, but so they will get involved. You need students who like a good argument and will pick holes in their argument and be delighted to challenge them, so they can help with the refutation and rebuttal. So a wide range of skills, and the more involved, the more fun. And then to maybe outline all the benefits. I mean, obviously, critical thinking will develop for all of them as a result of their participation. And then they learn a great deal about teamwork. And then the fun develops as well with team and the teamwork. So I think that's the second, work on the enthusiasm, explain what's involved, and then you're ready to go. Maybe thirdly, organise some kind of a schedule, a regular schedule. What suits the students and what suits the mentor? Will it be every Tuesday at lunchtime that the group could meet, or after school on a Thursday or whatever? But to decide on a set time, and then that becomes the concern debates timing, even if there is no debate on at that particular time. And then obviously you can build up the meetings the closer you get to a debate. So a schedule. Ideally, if a mentor had a colleague to support him or her, it's the ideal, where you can share the workload, or they'll support you or bounce the ideas off. They may not have quite the same commitment, but it does work really well if you have somebody else, a colleague, and it extends the fun for you as well. And lastly, before you get going, I think you should really study the marking sheet, just to familiarise yourself so that you can give good guidelines then and prepare them well from the beginning. So they're the main issues, and build up the excitement and enjoy it all. Well, when you're starting to prepare, I think first of all to take a long, broad look and look at the fixtures that you have ahead. And the Concerns Debates team, they will send you the list of fixtures. And I think it's important to check with your own team, first of all, that these 4 or 5 dates, whatever number of dates are set for you, that they suit your own team, and that they don't suddenly have a production or a trip or whatever that doesn't work and that clashes. So when that's fine with you for yourselves in your own school, then to check with the opposing teams and to check each one of them, and then to inform concern. Yes, these all suit, and certainly if there have to be any rearrangement, that you organise it with the school and that it comes back to the to concern, and inform them as quickly as possible if there's any change in the actual dates. So that's the first thing, I think, to check the schedule. Then, when you have to start to work on the actual preparation for the motion, the speeches. So my first advice would be that they would keep an open mind for as long as possible. Preparation begins with research, information, evidence. keep an open mind. Don't get locked into a particular angle too quickly. That's the first piece. Then when you feel you have that knowledge and understanding of the issue, then to move along to structure. How will you structure your approach to the debate, to the motion, to the stance that you've been asked to take? And there are many ways of doing that, but I think there should be a logical progression in the structure. I mean, it can be very simple. There could be economic, social, political, cultural consequences of something like sanctions, and individual students might opt, oh, I'd love to do the political aspect or the business aspect or whatever, and that works quite well. Or they can sometimes work from the Ireland, work small, something that's relevant in Ireland, and work out from Europe, America, the world, whatever it may be. But there is a logical progression, or start out there and work back. But that has to be decided. I think that's very important, that there is a clear structure. And then after that, I think I would suggest that they have to call a halt at certain stage, because very often you find you can just keep reading, you can just keep researching, and you have a deadline. You were given a date for this debate. So to call a halt and then think about how you're going to present this material, because there is a big difference between reading an essay and writing something and following it as a reader, and then when you actually have to listen to the same information. And that can have an impact then. So to become familiar with the material and think about how you're going to actually present it, so that the audience, the adjudicators, can engage with it. That's very important in terms of the delivery. And then also to think in terms of time. There is a time limit. The speeches shouldn't be too long, they shouldn't be too short. And you can really only work on the time when you have worked on the delivery, when you've actually slowed your pace down so that you can deliver it in a very accessible, engaging way, and then you can get a sense of the time. So to keep an open mind, to structure it, to work on both content and delivery, and to be aware of the time. And then obviously the big overriding all of that is the actual fixture and when it's taking place, and that all is going well for that particular date. To think about refutation and rebuttal, I think the first point really is that it should be accepted from the beginning, that each member of the team debating on a particular night, that they decide it's not just a case of delivering a speech, but I have to challenge an opposing argument. I'm debating, I'm not just speaking. And if that can be established, maybe from the start, that I have to do one anyway, that's the starting point. The ideal then is if you have your large team and you have others researching the opposing team's arguments, well then there'll be no surprises. They will alert you to the arguments that will be put up against you. And so if you work it into your preparation, then you have time to think about it. So if they mention a particular point, you sit around the table and you say, what will we say if this point comes to us? And with all the minds working together, I'm sure you'll come up with 1, 2, 3 possible answers to that, depending on the context of the debate and maybe on your own speech as well, which one fits most appropriately on the night. So I think if you have little cards and you write out the possible arguments coming against you and maybe 1, 2, 3 ways that you might counter it with a stronger argument or knock it or come up with a report that refutes that particular point or statistic, or deflect the argument maybe from multinationals to government's responsibility. There are ways of where you might feel that your argument is stronger, and to work that in. And maybe just include it as part of the fun in the preparation for the debates. And it is a debate. It's not just a speech competition. So that they're the main areas, I think. And I think it is possible to prepare and hopefully be alert to all on the night. First of all, I would say, well, when you're starting out as a debater, it doesn't really matter where or when. If you manage to make a refutation or a rebuttal, I think you'll be pleased, and that's an achievement in itself. So that's the starting point, that you actually manage to make a refutation and rebuttal and take on the opposing argument. After that, I don't think it's a good idea to begin with rebuttal or refutation. I think it's important to get your own strong argument out there. Make a couple of points, or at least one point, to set up your argument before you consider tackling the opposing argument. And it also builds up the fluency, and you settle down, you get a little bit more confidence when you're speaking. Another way of looking at refutation and rebuttal and integrating them is to look at your own speech before you begin, and you may have 2 or 3 points to prove your stance, and you could decide, well, here are opportunities for me to break the train of thought in my own speech, and so I could take on opposing arguments at these 2 or 3 places, because my own argument is fragmented there. So that's another way of looking at it. Obviously, the ideal is that you challenge the argument at the most relevant point in your own speech, that there was a link between what you're saying and what had previously been said. That's the ideal, and that you can refer and refute the opposing speaker, but that's not always possible. But I think what's really most important is that you make it clear that you are refuting and rebutting a particular point, and that you alert the audience and the adjudicators to what point you are refuting and rebutting. That it's not enough to just turn to an opposing speaker and address them by name and address a point. I think it's important to state the point that has been made by the opposing speaker and then to counter it. And then that's very clear, no matter what stage you're at. That's the key to that. Another handy, I suppose, hint is the captains at the beginning of the debate. They outline their team's arguments. They alert you to what each speaker will be speaking about. So you should know, if you listen carefully, if you're the third speaker, you should know what the previous second or third speaker will be speaking about, and get your mind prepared to how you might refute that particular angle. And particularly if you've been working on refutation and rebuttal, you'll know some of the points that could be relevant at that stage. But I think it's just important, refutation, rebuttal, it's the key, it's the kernel of debating. It's having your own argument, but ensuring that your argument is stronger and it counters the opposing speaker's argument. Well, I think a good speech has a definite line of argument. That's the essence of it, and that argument is clearly presented, and that there's a logic to it, and that it refers back to the motion and to the stance that the student has outlined for his speech. So a definite line of argument with good sources to support it, and that there's a clarity to the speech. But then also that there is a structure, a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. Advice sometimes is that you tell the audience what you're going to talk about. Then you tell them, you make the points, you say it in 2 or 3 points, and then you conclude by telling them what you have just said. So there's the clarity, there's the structure, there's the line of argument, there's the information. And then the last aspect of a good speech, I think, is the impact. And you have to work at the impact as well. You have to do more than inform. You have to engage, you have to persuade, and then you have to decide how you're going to do that. So again, I think a good speech will work in that they may decide to use language in a particular way for a certain emphasis, imagery, anecdotes, illustrations, examples, humour, something that you think will get the point across so that it's not too abstract, too general, and that it does make sense to someone who's listening to the speech for the first time, that they can take it in and follow the line of argument, so that when you begin to listen, you are listening attentively, but then you become involved, you become engaged, because at the end of a speech, you generally want some action from the listener. And in this case, you want the adjudicator to support or to refute the motion. So you have to work at it. So the good speech has the content, has that persuasive quality that engages them, and then leads them to think in a particular way, your way, at the end. So that's what's involved for the 4 speakers when they have to introduce their speeches and present it. And then the captains have to come back and they make a final speech. And I think, again, that's what it is. It's a summary, and that's important. It's a summary of their own stance, why their argument should stand, and then a summary of why the opposing argument should not stand, and why your argument was stronger, and to make that clear. So it's not an opportunity to introduce new material. It's very much a conclusion and pulling out all of the strong arguments and refutation that you've had to show why your argument should stand. So I think they're all the elements of a good speech.